HighBridge, a division of Recorded Books, presents Isn't It Obvious? Retailing and the Theory of Constraints by Eliyahu Goldratt with Ilan Eshkoli and Joe Brownleer. Read by Kaleo Griffith. Chapter 1. 50% off. Staring at the big red sign, Paul White wondered where his dreams had gone wrong. I really don't have the strength for another one of these days, he thought, and took another sip from his cup of freshly ground coffee. A long, deep breath later, Paul straightened his standard blue blazer and stepped inside the Boca Raton branch of Hannah's shop. Little red signs promoting the discounts, offspring of the bigger one outside, decorated the store. As the store manager, he had attached a lot of hope to this sale's success. However, the lines at the checkout counters were no longer than usual, and the products on sale were still piled high. The lower prices were not enough of an incentive. As he ran a hand through his graying hair, Paul shrugged. Was there anything else that could be done? It wasn't news that the store was not a huge success, but this morning Paul had received the monthly report. The Boca store had dropped down to 8th place in profitability out of the 10 stores in the region. It was a new low for him. Trying to shake off the uncomfortable feeling, he walked through the 35,000 square feet comprising the store's 6 departments, all of which were his responsibility. He passed the carefully laid out sheets and duvets on display in splashes of blue and green. Paul stopped for a moment to survey the mock bathroom they had set up, where thick, body-length towels hung next to bathrobes. Across from him were the kitchen textiles, where aprons and towels mingled, next to tables set with matching tablecloths, cloth napkins, and placemats in autumn shades. The carpet and rug department presented colors and textures from around the world. And then came the flowing curtains in shades of white, gold, and silver. The store always had a wide variety of goods, and he had worked hard to have a beautiful display maintained at all times. Trying to be constantly responsive to his customers, Paul had initiated a work plan of changing the in-store display twice as often as the front windows. The store offered attractive prices and promotions, but sales were still not ticking off. Was there anything else that could be done? A young staff trainee passed by and said hello. Paul returned the greeting with a full smile, while inwardly he reasoned that if he couldn't create more sales, perhaps staff should be dismissed. It was not something he wanted to do, but cutting one member of the sales staff meant saving some $20,000 a year. As he looked around, he saw that even though they were not in the middle of a holiday rush, all his salespeople were busy. There was no way he could let any of them go without placing some sales at risk. The store was running at reasonable manpower costs. So what else could be done? "Excuse me, miss," Paul overheard an elderly lady with bronze glasses saying to Janine, one of his department managers. Pointing to a maroon tablecloth, she asked, "Do you have this in 60 inches? "I'm afraid not," Janine replied. "We have 2 90-inch cloths left in this color and the 60-inch only in blue and beige. Would you prefer it in another color? Maybe one with a different pattern?" "No, thanks. It's for my sister, and maroon is her favorite color." As the elderly woman turned away, disappointed, Paul approached her. "Excuse me, ma'am," he offered, trying not to loom over her despite his 6'3" frame. "Perhaps I can be of assistance. Would you like me to check if I can obtain the tablecloth from one of the chain's nearby stores?" She agreed, and a call was placed to the Boynton Beach store. "Gary, do you have any of the maroon tablecloths, serial KTL 1860? That's the 60-inch ones." "Let me check," Gary said in a nasal voice, and Paul could hear him speaking with the staff on the other side of the line. "Yes, we do, but only one. I have a customer who would like to buy it. Any chance you could send it over?" "Sorry, Paul, no can do." "I guess this is what you call teamwork," Paul said bitterly, rolling his eyes. "If you really want to talk teamwork, instead of me sending you the tablecloth, how about sending the customer here? It will be a lot less of a hassle for everyone." Disappointed with his colleague, Paul decided to try another tack. He called Roger, the regional warehouse manager. Their daughters were in school together, and the families had become friends. "Hi, Raj. Sorry to bother you, but I've got a request. Any chance you can give me a serial KTL 1860 tablecloth?" "Sure, Paul. I can add it to your next shipment on Wednesday." "Thanks, Roger. Let me double-check with the customer, and I'll call you back." Paul hung up and turned to the elderly lady. "Ma'am, I'm happy to inform you that the tablecloth can be here on Wednesday," he reported, with the best customer service smile he could muster.
"Oh, I'm not sure," she said coolly. "I'm busy on Wednesdays, and I don't want to leave it for the last minute. Maybe, if I find the time, I'll stop in."
Paul watched in dismay as she left the store, and cursed under his breath the fact that he had bothered to intervene. He had just intensified his catch-22. It was almost certain this woman would not come back for the tablecloth. That meant that the tablecloth would end up as surplus for the store. He was already running a sale to get rid of his surplus stock, at little or no profit. There was no need to fill the store with items that wouldn't move fast enough, but if he didn't order it and she came in, she would be so disappointed that he would not only lose a sale, but he would lose a customer. Risk losing sales or risk surpluses? This dilemma was drowning him. No wonder his store's profits weren't higher. If only he knew exactly what the customers would buy. He called Roger again. "Send me the tablecloth, please, Raj. I'll fill the special order form when I get back to my desk. I just hope someone will buy it." And then Paul added, "Roger, do you have a crystal ball in stock? I've asked the head office for 2, but they said it'll take a while." Roger's smile was almost audible. As Paul hung up, he asked himself again if there was something else that could be done to boost his store's profitability, and the answer was a simple no. Sales versus surplus was a dilemma that only a crystal ball could solve. Chapter 2. Caroline stepped onto the porch of her parents' waterfront house, carrying her father's cell phone. Closing the glass doors behind her, she caught a reflection of her children playing catch on the large lawn, between the house and the bay. The palm trees that stood vigil around the porch her parents had recently renovated cast a pleasant shadow in the late afternoon. Striding toward her father and his second-in-command, Christopher, Caroline passed behind her husband, Paul, who was deep in conversation with her mother and Christopher's wife, Jackie.
"I thought the Muniz piece was extremely powerful," Lydia, Caroline's mother, said. "A wonderful tribute. It was arranged so well." Jackie turned to Caroline and asked, "Dear, did you get to the opening of the Miami Art Museum anniversary exhibit?" "No, I was abroad at the time," she replied.
"I took Lisa and Ben to the show," Paul said, smiling. Pecking him on the cheek, Caroline added, "I think the kids enjoyed it." And then she walked toward the grill.
"Dad, you're as forgetful as Ben,"
Caroline said, and handed Henry Aronson his cell phone. There were many resemblances between the two. The daughter had inherited his black hair and sharp brown eyes, as well as his stubborn determination. The stocky, charismatic man looked surprised at having forgotten the phone. "Did it miss me terribly?" he joked. Henry took a break from turning the burgers on the grill and quickly checked if he had missed anything important. Seeing that there had been neither new calls nor new text messages, he slipped the phone into his pocket. Pointing at his grandchildren playing catch, he added, "If Ben inherited my memory, I hope he also got my pitching abilities. Christopher, remember that game against Miami Senior High?" Christopher stood a full head over his best friend and boss. "Yes, I remember your one no-hitter. I also remember that earlier we were discussing some changes Caroline wanted to make in the new computer system. I really think we have to stop introducing new changes."
"I know that my department needs this feature. It's not a question of maybe," she argued ardently. Caroline was head of purchasing for the Hannah's Shop chain, and she strove for perfection in all aspects of acquisitions. "It will allow us to manage bids and pricing much more efficiently."
"My dear," Christopher replied, We can't keep making changes. The endless so-called improvements have been causing dysfunction for over a year now. Enough is enough. In a short while, you'll be calling the shots. For now, I need you to accept that these changes could well mean a disaster. I think we can consider her recommendation if it will save us money in the long run," Henry intervened. "Get me an evaluation from the computer division by Tuesday." Seeing that Paul had joined the kids, who were tossing a ball around, it struck Caroline that she was again wasting precious quality time on work. The kids were growing up so fast, and before she knew it, this kind of fun would become a fleeting memory.
"Yes, Dad, I'll get the evaluation ASAP," she said, and grabbing a glove from the corner of the porch, bounced over to stand between Ben and Lisa. "Count me in," she called. As dessert was served, Henry stood up. He looked at the small group of family and friends who had assembled in honor of Lydia's birthday: Caroline, Paul, and their kids, Henry's right-hand man, Christopher, and his wife, Jackie, Gloria, Lydia's childhood friend, and her current husband.
"Some 40 years ago, I fell in love with the most beautiful girl who ever entered my mother's store," Henry related while holding his wife's hand tenderly. "I knew immediately I wanted to spend the rest of my life with you. As you have said so many times, and justifiably so, I have spent too much time at work. It is time I made my wish come true. This year will be my last as president of Hannah's shop."
"Henry, dear, you'll never leave it. You love the company too much," Lydia chided. "It's your baby."
"So I'll leave it to my other baby," he answered. "Caroline will run the show perfectly without me."
Paul froze in his seat, and Caroline started to protest. "Dad, this is neither the time—" "Uncle Darren!" 13-year-old Ben yelled at the handsome black-haired man who stood quietly smiling in the veranda doorway.
"Surprise!"
Darren exclaimed, and he walked over and hugged Lydia.
"Happy birthday, Mom. I would have come earlier, but there was a delay at LaGuardia." "There would be no delay if you worked in Miami," Henry scolded, "and then we could see the twins more, and not only on holidays." "Nice to see you too, Dad."
Caroline's older brother sat down between his niece and nephew, giving each a hug.
"But didn't you just say you're going to have a lot of time to maybe visit your grandkids real soon?"
"Would you like something to eat?" Lydia cut in, providing, as always, a buffer between her husband and son. "We can cook up a burger for you in no time."
"No, thanks, Ma.
I'll just take double portions of your delicious dessert." Caroline leaned over and kissed her brother on the cheek. As Paul passed his old roommate some cake, he said, "We have a lot to talk about." Chapter 3.
"I could have taken a car service, you know," Darren said as he buckled up.
Paul had insisted on driving his old college roommate to the airport.
"It's been so long since we had a quiet talk, just the two of us. I thought I should grab the opportunity," Paul answered, waiting for a traffic light to change. "So, you seeing anybody special these days? Are you channeling my mother?" "No, not right now. Work takes up too much of my time." "Some big project keeping you up at night?" Paul asked as he pulled the Grand Cherokee onto the broad causeway. Traffic was not very heavy. "I'm involved in a number of initiatives, and any one of them could turn into something big overnight," Darren replied, and his gray-blue eyes sparkled. "The world of venture capital is full of surprises. Actually, I think I closed a last-minute deal a mere 15 minutes before showing up yesterday." "And I thought you came to Florida for your mother's birthday," Paul said. "Anyway, I was sure that by now you wouldn't have to work so hard on every deal. Shouldn't opportunities be chasing you, not vice versa?" "Yeah, I thought so too," Darren said, tapping his long fingers on the window and staring out at the water. "But until I find my own niche, this is how it works. You need to have a reputation as a maven in order for opportunities to be chasing you." "I see. So, until then, you kill yourself so someone else can have long-term profits, while all you're left with is the finder's fee." Wouldn't you rather be the big boss instead of just the middleman? Hold on, I see where this is going. Darren shifted in his seat to look straight at his brother-in-law. Are you talking about investments or about home textiles? I think you should consider coming back to the company, Paul said determinedly. Turning on to I-95, he added, We all know it's you Henry has always wanted as his successor. There is no way I am going to come back to run my father's company. I moved to New York to make something for myself, Darren asserted. What's more, as far as I can see, home textiles is a slow industry. Nothing really changes. In ventures, the sky's the limit. There are always new directions for development, always something exciting just around the corner. Yeah, maybe you're right. Even if it was a long shot, Paul reasoned, he had to check if Darren's determination had softened. Apparently it hadn't. Of course I'm right, was the response. Besides, Caroline will be a good president. She'll make a great president, but when that happens, I won't be able to leave the firm. Leave? Darren was genuinely surprised. What are you talking about? Darren, you know I'm stuck with the store. You've been stuck before, and every time you manage to unstick yourself and astonish everybody. You were desperate when you were in the acquisition department, and then you came up with that brilliant criteria set for opening new stores. A lot of it has been incorporated into the company's expansion plan. I know you better than you think, Mr. White. The handsome venture capitalist had never seen his best friend at such a low. Trying to raise Paul's spirits, Darren continued. Remember in college, when you fell behind in the last year because you used any excuse to run down to Florida to see Kara? Nevertheless, you placed third in our year. I'm confident you will find your way out of this rut. I wish I shared your confidence. Paul shrugged. Since I took over in Boca, the store has only declined in the rankings. This quarter it dropped to 8th place. So maybe you shouldn't be running a store. You've got a different kind of smarts, the smarts needed to manage big systems. Come your next promotion, you'll find your bearings again. Hit a strong point. Remember the condition I made when I joined the company? Paul asked rhetorically. No shortcuts. You wanted to start at the bottom, to move from one position to another so that you could learn every aspect of the company. Yes, but no shortcuts means that I insist on not being promoted unless I deserve the promotion. The most important lesson I learned from my dad was that getting medals that you didn't really earn, is the most damaging thing to yourself, to your self-esteem, to your integrity. More of Coach White's wise words, Darren thought. They're almost as bad as the rules my father spouts whenever he can. Paul continued. It was my idea to start from the trenches and work my way up, instead of being parachuted to an executive position married to the president's daughter. Darren, you don't want to feel like the son of... So, why are you surprised that I will never agree to be just the son-in-law? I don't see the problem. You've moved around a lot in the company and have a lot of experience. You've proven your worth every step of the way. What else do you want? Almost every step, Paul countered. In every other position I made a change. Not always the biggest change, but somehow I left an imprint of some kind. But here, in the heart of Hannah Shop's business, in managing a store, I failed. Maybe it's because I've got the worst location possible in that old ugly mall. Maybe it's because my clientele is all rich older ladies and the chain is geared towards the middle class. All these excuses don't change the fact that I haven't proven my value in this most crucial step. Maybe you just need a little more time? That's my problem. I don't have much time left. Paul seemed upset. I've been there for 3 years. A year ago, the pressure to move me up started, so I stalled as much as I could, trying to buy time. But judging by my performance, there are so many other people who deserve to be promoted before me. Darren, if you know me, you know too well that I will never accept it. No way. Paul avoided a speeding motorcycle and continued. In any case, the promotion is looming just around the corner. In 6 months, I should be learning the ropes in my next position. Until last night, it was clear to me that I had half a year to either improve things or leave, and then Henry goes and ruins that option as well. Why? Because he's handing the reins over to Kara? The question was inevitable. For years we've known. Everybody knew that it was in the pipeline. And why should that stop you from leaving? Kara will understand the complexity of your situation and won't take it personally. And maybe if Paul leaves, he thought, it will show the old man that this firm is not the heaven on earth he thinks it is, that not everyone fits in there. As long as the promotion was just in the pipeline, I had time, Paul explained. Frankly, Henry's always talked about retirement, but until yesterday he never gave a specific date. We all assumed it wouldn't happen for many years, and by then the kids would be older. The kids? You mean your kids? What did they have to do with it? Currently, Paul answered, with the constant business turbulences, Kara is often overseas, so I'm at home with Ben and Lisa. With the presidency, she'll have even less time for them. You know very well that I won't be able to find an appropriate job that doesn't require a lot of travel. With the promotion inside the company, I could have managed. Kara and I would have coordinated our trips not to coincide. But I won't be able to do that if I work outside Hannah's shop. That means the kids won't have either of us during those crucial years. Lisa's only 9. And you won't argue that your self-fulfillment is more important than Kara's, or than your kids' needs, Darren concluded, truly understanding his friend. And instead of asking her to give up her dream job, you're asking me to come and steal it from her? But it's not her dream job. Are you kidding me? Hannah's shop is her life. Darren gave Paul a funny look. Did she say she doesn't want the job? Not in those words, Paul replied. The thing is, Caroline has always said that purchasing fits her like a glove. Predicting market trends, choosing the new collections, squeezing the best deals from the suppliers, that's what she's so good at. That's what she loves. She will hate being president, the top administrator, immersed in numbers and petty, ego-driven politics. I know she'll be miserable. So you want me to ride in on my white steed, wave my sword around, take the presidency by storm, rescue the fair maiden, and save the day for all? Darren could not help but smile. Dude, I love you to death, but you're asking a bit much here. I know, Paul apologized. But it was worth a shot. You'll have to tough it out, I guess. Yeah. And what does Caroline say about you contemplating leaving? She doesn't know yet. Paul slowed down, allowing a gray van to overtake them. I couldn't find a way to tell her. For years she has said how great it will be when we can drive to work together. I don't know how to tell her that it won't be happening. You have to, Darren said as they pulled into Miami International Airport. If there's one thing I've learned from my divorce, is that you should discuss what troubles you as early as possible. Pulling up outside the departures terminal, Paul answered, I know. I just have to figure out how. When the right moment came, Paul rationalized, he would tell Kara. Before then, hopefully, a solution would come his way, making that burdensome conversation completely unnecessary. And if you end up leaving the firm, Darren said as he opened the car door to let himself out, give me a call. You know I appreciate your talents. Chapter 4. Paul was brushing his teeth when his cell phone rang. Caroline reached across the king-size bed to his nightstand and answered it. Oh, I see, she said, getting up and walking to the bathroom. Honey, it's the alarm company. Quickly rinsing his mouth, he took the phone. Yes? Mr. White, this is Darla from Granbury Emergency Services. A water leak has been detected in the A5 warehouse facilities at the Boca Beach Mall. Her voice was almost metallic. Paul ended the call and went back to brushing his teeth. One of the most aggravating aspects of having a cell phone was that people who monitored the alarms that went off by themselves could find you anywhere, anytime. As he pulled on a pair of gray slacks, the cell phone rang again. Morning, Ted. Paul greeted his floor manager brightly. Everything ready at the store for the new collection to arrive? Yes, but we have a big problem, a huge problem. Paul's smile faded at Ted's reply. A pipe burst in the storeroom ceiling. There's water everywhere. They just closed the main pipes, so I will be able to go in and see in a minute. How much water are we talking about? Paul asked and sat down to put on his socks and shoes. I have no idea. A lot. I don't know what the damages are yet, but I heard John from Cafe Books saying that all their stock was destroyed. I'm on my way." Paul told Caroline about the situation, asked her to apologize to the kids for missing breakfast, and ran out the door, jacket and tie in hand. Driving toward I-95, Paul called his floor manager. "Ted, give me a short report." "It looks like most of the boxes weren't touched," Ted informed him, and Paul sighed in relief. "We're taking all the boxes that were damaged upstairs. Once those are all upstairs, have some of the staff go through the boxes to see what can be salvaged, but keep bringing up the rest of the boxes," Paul demanded. "The dampness and the smells could easily get into the textiles." "Should I put them in the parking lot?" Paul made a quick decision as he turned onto the interstate. "No, put it all inside the store. Call me in half an hour with an update." His Jeep had never been driven so fast before. On the 6th try, somewhere near Aventura, Paul finally got through to the mall manager. "Raoul, it's Paul from Hannah's shop. I'm on my way to the mall. How bad is it?" "Paul, I can't talk right now. Don't worry, everything's under control. Our contractor is already here, and within 3 or 4 days, I'm sure everything will be back to normal." Raoul hung up before Paul could ask any more questions. As Paul approached Deerfield Beach, Ted called. "Yes, Ted. We cleared out all the boxes that got damaged and are checking the goods," he said. "Mike and Isabella just got here, so we started to bring up the rest of the boxes, as you requested." "Thanks, Ted. I'll be there in about 10 minutes. Paul was grateful his most responsible subordinate had arrived early that morning. It is always good to know you have someone you can rely on. Pulling into his reserved parking space, Paul could not help staring at the piles of wet books and shoe boxes in the parking lot. "Damn," he thought, "that's a lot of damage." Cadence, the owner of Cafe Books, was standing dumbfounded on her loading dock. The sight was startling, and Paul began to fear that Ted had underestimated the real damage to his store's goods. Paul entered his store through the loading dock. He nodded to one of the floor staff who was waiting with an empty hand truck next to the service elevator. Quickly moving past his office, the Boca store manager had to see how the store had fared. Inside, beneath hearts and arrows celebrating Valentine's Day, a human chain had been set up, and his staff was working hard to bring in the merchandise. He approached Ted, who was standing next to 3 salespeople unpacking and checking goods. "What's the damage?" "We were lucky, boss," the younger man replied. "I think the plastic wrapping protected most of the merchandise in the waterlogged cartons, but we lost a few rolls of wall-to-wall carpet and a number of drapes. We're not sure yet how many." Paul was relieved. Considering his neighbor's situation, he had really been fortunate. "Thank you, Ted. You're doing a great job," Paul said honestly. He turned to all his employees and said, "You're all doing great. I really appreciate your efforts and the teamwork. Thank you so much." Looking at the situation, it was clear to Paul that the store would not open that day. In order to be able to open tomorrow, he had to clear the stock as soon as possible. "I'm going to the storeroom," he told the sandy-haired man from South Miami. "I need to see it with my own eyes." The first thing that hit Paul as he stepped out of the service elevator was the smell of damp. A lot of water must have damaged a lot of books, shoes, and who knows what else to create such a strong smell so fast. The mall's underground storage facilities had a ventilation system as old as the mall's most frequent visitors. If it didn't dry out soon, the whole floor would reek of mold. The gray floor was still wet, so Paul had to tread carefully en route to his storeroom. The double doors were wide open for ventilation, and he could see a crack in the ceiling, from which water was still dripping. He looked at the industrial shelving units that usually held the numerous cartons of the over 2,000 different stock-keeping units, or SKUs, the items his store sold. The water had hit 4 separate shelving units, so he had been very fortunate that so little damage had been incurred. He thanked the gods of plastic covering and vacuum wrapping. He went to look at Cadence's storeroom, adjacent to his own. The place was a mess. A large part of the ceiling had caved in, and he could see the long crack in the old pipes. Large pieces of plaster decorated the floor, amidst soggy pages, wet bindings, and soaking heart-shaped greeting cards. In the middle of the storeroom stood a middle-aged man with a mop of black hair.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?